Hello, everyone. Good morning. Some of you has a balloon. Please raise your balloons. Before I start, I would like to share with you something very personal. Yesterday, I was at home, and I was a bit nervous. I don't know why. But I was speaking with my daughters, 8 and 10 years old, about this conference. And they told me that if you are nervous, we have something that you can do. Every time that we are a bit sad, we take a balloon, and only seeing the balloon, we feel better. So I thought, oh, why not? They are my daughters. They are clever than me. So I decided to put these balloons across the audience. So please, the idea is to keep this balloon during the speak, and we will do something with them at the end. But please, during the speak, I would like that you move around the balloons. You can pass to your neighbor, or you can throw it back, whatever you want. It's clear? Big yes? It's clear? OK. So we are going to start. Very good. OK. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you to the organization to bring me the opportunity to be in front of you. How many of you have seen this film? Raise your hand. Wow. The film is 300. The film tells the Battle of the Thermopylae. It was like 418 years before Christ, when there was a war between Persia, led by King Xerxes, and Greece. At the Battle of the Thermopylae, Leonidas, king of Sparta, that guy, is not me, leads an outnumbered warriors, around 7,000, against the massive Persian army, more than 300,000 soldiers. I don't want to make any spoiler. The ones that have seen the picture, the movie, know how it ends. But I would like to highlight that this battle inspires all the Greeks in order to be united against a common enemy. And I'm thinking that the people that are in that room are Spartans. Are you Spartans? You are battling with a lot of people that doesn't want to change the things, to change the world. And we, as Spartans, we are Spartans? Want to change that. This is one of the reasons that we are here. The other is the Barcelona weather, the beach, the restaurants, and so on. But in this presentation, I'm going to tell you how we dealt with a similar problem than the Spartans, where a lot of people inside my company was using data, bad data, latency bad data, to maintain never-ending discussions in never-ending meetings. And some of us, the Spartans, we decide to create a new service, a new internal service, to end with these never-ending discussions. Obviously, we succeed. If not, I won't be here explaining to you. But before starting, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Paco Orozco. I'm engineering manager at Adevinta. My role implies people management and product ownership of the products that we deliver to the rest of the company. I'm inside a team that is part of the central teams, so we deliver services for a lot of marketplaces around the world. And these central services are trying to cover the needs or the common needs of these marketplaces. My team consists in 6 awesome software engineers, of whom I'm very proud. Today, I'm very happy to see some of the people that I have collaborated in the past, and I'm collaborated today. Hi, Emilio. Hi, Cristina. Hi, Reche. Hi, Daniel Caballero, that is around. Hi, Uriol. Hi, Fran. And in my current role, in my current team, we are in charge of one of the most adopted services in the organization. It's called Jams, and it's responsible of delivering the images that you can see in our marketplaces. On the non-professional side, besides I have 2 daughters, very clever, let's see. I love hiking, and it's my favorite hobby, and probably you will find me hiking around the Pyrenees time to time. And now, a very tough question. Do you know what is Adevinta? Who knows what is Adevinta? A few. OK. Adevinta is one of the biggest marketplaces specialists in Europe. But it's still a family of local brands that are probably more known than us. For example, these brands. We want to make a change in the world by helping everyone and everything to find new purpose. We believe that every house can be a home. Every person, like you, has a role to play. And every object can find a second, third, or fourth life. They only have to find their matching need. And our marketplaces create these matches, building a sustainable future when everything has a new life, a new purpose. We want to have a positive impact in people's lives. And thanks for the second-hand effect, that means that selling used goods, we make and we promote sustainability. For example, in the last year, thanks to the things that our marketplaces contribute to sell, we saved 1.1 million tons of plastics for the world. And that is more or less the amount of plastics that the European Union is using in plastic bags for 1.5 years. Adevinta has presence in 60 countries around the world, mainly in Europe, Latin America, and North Africa. And my team is in the central team's side. That means that we are in Barcelona, but we are offering our services to all of these marketplaces. We have some leading local brands, for example, Leboncoin in France, InfoJobs here in Spain, Subito in Italy, and Jofogas in Hungary, among many, many others. We believe that we should serve people where they live, acknowledging what is special for every culture and every place. For this reason, we are leading local brands that they make part of the daily life for more than 100 million users in the world. So now I've introduced myself, I've introduced the companies. We are hiring, we are hiring, we are hiring. So if your boss is not here, talk to me. And now we are going to the problem. We are going to start talking about what's the problem that I want to share with you. How many of you have been in a meeting? That's easy. I don't believe that you are not in a meeting. Never. OK. How many of you have been in a meeting thinking that you were wasting your time? Oh, there is more people now. And how many of you have been in a meeting where the discussion goes around some data, some metric, or some statement? OK, not bad. This is what happens to us. As I mentioned, we are part of a central team, so we offer services to the rest of the marketplaces. That means that the local brands has the IT department, and they have the data centers, or they have their cloud computing, and we offer a new service, or a service that is overlapping with one of the existing services, and we want that they onboard to non-services in order to reduce the cost, the global cost, in the company. That means that, obviously, our service is not as close as their service. And that brings us the situation that the marketplaces were saying, oh, I'm in Paris, just hypothetical site in Paris. I'm in Paris, my data center is in Paris, and you are trying to convince me to use a service that you are offering from AWS Ireland. The latency is huge, and we cannot afford this latency. So I prefer to maintain my legacy server in my data center, build it by my own engineers, maintaining by my own engineers, that fails time to time. But the latency is huge in your service. In the same room, there was probably another site from Italy, and say, I have the same problem. I have my data center in Italy. My customers are in Italy. And again, you are trying to convince me that it's a good idea to use your service that is in Ireland. You are crazy. The latency is too high. I cannot afford that. And we were debating that over and over and over. Probably it was the biggest waste of time I've ever seen in my company. Because we were not discussing about the cost, the features, other concerns. The only hot topic was the latency is too high. Some of us realized that the problem was not this discussion. The problem was that we were trying to compare different things. They had some latency measurements that were apples, and we have another latency measurements that were oranges. And we were trying to convince the counterpart that apples were better than oranges. And obviously, that they are different things, and they cannot be compared as is. There was a lack of trust between the both sides, because I don't know how they did these measurements, and they don't know how I did my measurements. If you have worked with latency, you know that as an engineer, and all of you are engineers, not me, you have realized that it's very easy to get the data that you want when you are comparing things. If you don't like some of your results, just say it's an outlier and keep it away from your data set. So in those discussions, I remember one day when one guy was showing us some latency measurements and was telling us that these measurements show how your latency is bigger than my latency. And one guy in the room that was very quiet until then stood up, find a whiteboard, and start writing some formulas. Given the distance, the geographical distance from the country where the latency measurements was done and the result, he demonstrated that this traffic should have been faster than light. That seemed and seems currently impossible. And we realized that in that topic, there was some underlying problem. So one idea came to our mind. It was to deploy some dummy services in AWS regions. This dummy service was in that POC, a Golang application, returning a fixed length body of 1 kilobyte and 1 megabyte in order to simulate AP calls and simulate some kind of downloading or uploading. And then using an extreme fancy bash script in order to get the time that we invest to call these APIs, this service, this dummy service. Then this bash creates a file, a local file, and the people could send us this local file. We merge all the data, we create a report, and we can share with all the people. We decided to invest some time in this proof of concept, and we select 4 sites in order to run this script. Obviously, we invite the guys from Paris, the guys from Italy, and we choose 2 more, one in South America and one more here in Spain. The idea was that ask them to run this script, and the main goal was to realize that if we agree in the way that we can measure this latency, we can have better discussions, because the data would be the data for all of us. So we wanted to build this trust in the service. For real reasons, and for simplicity too, we decided that the latency measurements results will go to a file that they will share with us. And they were able to see if the results are against or aligned with their expectations. We share this script. They give us the data. And with the chosen sites, we shared the results. Let's see these 2 graphs. Le Bon Coin is in Paris. Subito is in Italy. EU Central 1 is Paris. EU West 1 is Ireland. Sorry, EU Central 1 is Frankfurt. EU West 1 is Ireland. And EU West 3 is Paris. If you remember, Le Bon Coin was saying, I'm in Paris, my people is in Paris, my customers is in Paris. If you want that I onboard in your service, please deploy it in Paris, because the latency is huge. I cannot afford to go to Ireland. OK, let's imagine that we can deploy that in Paris. But Subito was telling us the same. I'm in Italy. My customers are Italian, are in Italy too, and I cannot afford to go to Ireland. And they were suggesting us to go to Paris too. But after we share this data, the Italian guys realized that Frankfurt has less latency. So if you are really aware about, or you are really concerned about the latency, Frankfurt is a better option. And in Paris, come on, guys. Probably the difference in latency is very, very small. That's not the big concern. If you put that in the equation, I don't think that that's something that is blocking you to onboard in my service, right? What do you think? We are Spartans, right? So we realized that with that service, we're able to compare apples to apples. Now we have all the same data. Now they can share the data, and they can transparently see what numbers are. It was a big success, because this discussion, that was a never-ending discussion, was ended there. Obviously, they started another discussion. The price, that you are developing that and no us. What happens if that fails at 3 o'clock in the morning? And this service is in English and I'm in French. These kind of things. But that's moved the discussion to another step, to another side. So we realized that we need a service with an agreed set of latency metrics, a service that built these dummy services across the world, a service that has somehow a way to get the results and share with all the company to make better driver decisions. So we go for the next step before creating a service. That was creating a request for comment document, an RFC. Probably you have heard about the RFC. It's the documentation that in internet has been used for several years in order to define the standards and so on. The idea of an RFC is a technology document where it describes the methods, the behaviors, research or innovation of a working system of a service. The idea is to share this document among peers to peer review or to convey more information or improvements in your implementation or your system. The team where I work is very proclive to use these RFCs before starting any development. And to be honest, when I joined to the company, and when I saw that, I thought probably the same that you are thinking now. It's a waste of time. Doing an RFC to build a service that I know how to build it. I have a POC. I know that it's working. And now we need to document things before starting any line of code. Seemed a waste of time. But the RFC was open for the whole organization, and they were able to see the internals, to discuss the internals, to suggest changes, to suggest implementations. And after 2 weeks, in the almost 20-page long document, I will repeat, 20-page long document, had more than 30 interactions that helped us to define completely how this service was going to be and which metrics we were going to collect. We started from a POC. We validated that this service makes sense. And then the RFC allows us to build trust in the whole organization. Nobody can say after that I don't know how these guys are measuring that. There was some RFC outputs that I've tried to summarize here. The first one, that's why a custom development instead of buying something? OK, we reviewed a lot of third-party products to see if any of them cover completely all requirements. And when I mentioned we, means my team and all the people that was in the organization reading this document. Because, you know, we are engineers, besides Spartans. And engineers have a lot of knowledge, and they know a lot of things. Have you tried Cloud Harmony? No, we will try it. Have you tried doing that with Prometheus that integrates very well with your pipeline? No, we will try it. Have you tried to do that with Pingdom? That seems that it's doing the same? OK, let's do it. So at the end, we collected a bunch of tools that could solve the problem. And we reviewed it all, and we saw that none of them was covering our needs. Some of them because due to the lack of continuous pooling, because we wanted that this information was continuously available. Others, due to the client's requirements. Probably they don't get us enough information, or they have some installation requirements that we cannot fulfill. And most of them were focused in user experience instead of service-to-service communication. And that put me in the second RFC output. Why we were interested in service-to-service latencies and not in the full site, on the whole site performance. That was in that way because we had other tools to get the performance of one site. And we, as a central team, we are not very interested in user experience at all. I mean, I have some services that I want that you onboard in my service, so I need to give you data to make the decision of onboarding in my service. And hopefully, that will improve your user experience. So at the end, we decided to go for an interactive development from the POC to the full site. We iterate several times, focusing only on service-to-service. Obviously, during the RFC, we agreed the set of metrics, the metrics that we will expose to our new customers or new users, that were the time to do a get, the errors, if they happen. It should be possible to do an HTTP and HTTPS request, and we will use only IPv4, you know, because IPv6 it's always coming, but it's easier if we only focus on one of the stacks. So at the end, we take our POC and we iterate over and over and over and over, adding more features to cover the requirements that our new customers wanted. So we started with a bash script of 500 lines of code. The father of that script is sitting around this audience, so I don't see him now, but he's here. You will recognize him by his long beard. But the interesting thing on that script is it has more than 130 lines of tests. Yes, we were testing bash. That if you have tried it, better. If you have not tried it, don't do it for your sane mental. So we started with that script, and then we were iterating. The first script, as I mentioned it, gives the results in a file, in a local file that you should send us in order to do the reports. Then we iterate, and instead of sending us the file, we put an S3 bucket where the script put the file. Then we substitute this S3 bucket by a sumo logic service. So the script writes some log lines in sumo logic, and we were able, with sumo logic tooling, to create very beautiful dashboards where the people can see their latency and so on. But what happened? It happens that the guys that were using that service doesn't want our dashboards, you know. This dashboard is not I want. I want that the letter is in red and you are using blue. OK, let's change that. So they were asking us to have access to the metrics. So then they can use these metrics to create their own reports, they customize it, queries, and so on. So the next step was to move from sumo logic to Prometheus in order to split the data among all the teams. In the deploying part, we have changes too. As I mentioned, we started with 6 AWS regions. But then someone told us, OK, but I'm using Google Cloud. I would like to have the same latency measurements against Google Cloud. I say, OK. We were using CloudFormation in order to deploy the target in Amazon. So we needed to find a new solution to deploy in Google Cloud that was Terraform, that is multi-provider, and this seemed as that we will give us some benefits. At the end, we achieve our current implementation. The draw is not the best one, but you can see the awesome Edge team that is in charge of the service. We are in charge of deploying the clients in several places. I didn't mention it before, but one of the key points of this service is that we have remote probes around the world that are the ones that are measuring the latency and giving us the results. We decided that the best way to release these clients was using a Docker image that you can run almost everywhere. And we started to release these Dockers. We used two approaches. One was using Raspberry Pis, and we put the Docker inside the Raspberry Pi and send it to the marketplace. And please, Jean-Louis, can you plug this Raspberry Pi? Yes, it's an spyware. Don't worry, but plug it. Or Mauro, can you plug the Raspberry Pi in your data center? It's to send us some information. That could be very difficult in some environments. It was very easy because they were very engaged and they seen before our RFC. So they know what was the intention of having these Raspberry Pis in their data centers. If you know any system administrator, are there any system administrator in the room? No? Thank you. If you know any system administrator, you know that if you ask to a system administrator, please, can I plug that into data center? The answer is always, yes, of course. Plug it wherever you want. But in some cases, very strange cases, they don't want to plug some things in their data centers. It's my data center. In that case, we realized it, and we were very happy to see how the people was helping us to increase the number of probes that we need to get good data. So we are in charge of maintaining the image inside the Raspberry Pis. We use a service that is called Balena.io. That is an EOT platform that gives us the possibility of having multiple Raspberry Pis across the world and using a commit to a special repository, we can deploy the code inside the Raspberry Pis. And we can manage it with, like if they were like Amazon instances or something like that. This image has a Go client coded by us that gets the target inventory from a DNS entry. And once we have this target inventory, we do the measurements against our dummy services. Now we have services deployed in Google Cloud, in AWS, and in an internal Kubernetes cluster. That is the service that we were offering to the other marketplaces to onboard in. And some of other targets that we are using are APIs of our internal services in order to take advantage of this service in order to know how our APIs are performing. At the end, all the clients send the metrics to an exposer, and then Prometheus pull this exposer in order to have all the metrics in Prometheus, and the users are able to use Grafana in order to explode and to use these metrics to something interesting or not, I don't know, but to something more interesting than having only the log. Obviously, as you can see, the tooling is very different, and it's very complex. But the good thing is that we reach this point iterating in very small steps. So that gives us the opportunity to always have the tooling that we need and not over-engineering the solution. On the development side, we have iterated too. This is our deployment flow for the targets. We use a software that is called Spinnaker that allows us that in every change in the dummy service, we are able to bake different images for different cloud providers. Then these images are deployed in the cloud providers in a pre-environment. We do an end-to-end test to ensure that all is working and nothing has been changed, the contract is still the same, and so on. And if all the end-to-end test is green, we repeat the same in the pro environment. And for the client, the piece of code that is running inside the Raspberry Pi or inside a Docker in some Docker host that is in some data centers, we use the approach that you have seen in several speaks before me. That is, we have a client that a lot of testing, unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end testing. And then if all is green, we build a Docker image. And then with Balena.io, we are able to deploy this Docker inside the Raspberry Pi. Or if you are using our Docker image in a Docker host, the Docker image dies every 60 minutes. And when the Docker image is booting up, he answers if there is any new client version in order to download the new client version and start running. That allows us to change the client, and in less than an hour, having all the sites, all the probes in the same version with the new features. And as I mentioned it at the beginning, we are Spartans, right? We are? Yes. We are? Yes. OK. And the balloons? OK. I see one. Only one? OK. Remember, my daughters told me that this will help me. OK. So thanks to the way that we engage the people, now we have 15 probes that are covering almost the 16 countries where we have present. And we have sent 3 more in order to cover the places that they have not covered yet. It's something interesting, if you are very curious, to see that I've started the conversation pointing one site that was one of the sites that was involved in the discussion. One site that was invited to use the POC. Do you remember which country was? Nobody? It's very close to Spain. France, yeah. And they are not using any prof yet. I don't know why. They have not deployed any prof yet. They started with us the POC, but seems that they are not interested in knowing that probably the measurements that they shared with us before were not so aligned with the results that we are getting now from other sites. But anyway, for us, it was awesome to see how the people was involved in the service and how they're willing to have a prof. They have onboarded very fast. They are very happy. They are asking us new features. And this, that was a bottom-up initiative, helped us a lot to create trust among the service. Now, it's time to celebrate. Can you move the balloons to celebrate? I have mine here. OK, there are a lot of success stories. From the very beginning, we saw that the benefits of this service. As I mentioned before, a lot of projects were stuck in that kind of discussions. They were discussing the latency or the goodness of the data. Some of the success stories was, for example, we were in charge of Jam service that I presented before, and we had presence in Ireland and in Oregon. But then a Chilean marketplace, it's called Yapo, wanted to use our service from Chile. And the closest region where we were deployed were Oregon. But we thought, OK, let's do some dogfooding, and let's use Latency Map to select which region is the proper one to cover the Chilean marketplace. And we realized that was not Oregon. It was Virginia. So we moved all setup from Oregon to Virginia, and we reduced by a half the latency of that marketplace. Another finding that we have had with Latency Map, it's something that is very painful for the company. Most or all of our services are deployed in Ireland. Some of them have multi-region setups, like YAMS, but most of them are only deployed in Ireland. And reviewing the latency map measurements, we realized that the best region in Europe for our marketplaces is Frankfurt. Oh, what a pity. Because now, in front of our marketplaces, we are forced to move our workloads from Ireland to Frankfurt for latency measurements data. So we are in this transition, and some of the teams are working in order to move the workloads from Ireland to Frankfurt to reduce the latency of these services to our marketplaces. And the last success story is very, very interesting. Is there here any network guy? One? You and me are alone. We are Spartans and network guys. Sorry. Probably we are not in the right conference. No? OK, so I mentioned that Yapo is a Chilean marketplace. They are in Chile, in Santiago, Chile, and they are using a data center there. And they wanted to use YAMS, and we were doing some measurements in order to see what is the best region for them. And we realized that there is as you probably know, an AWS region in Brazil that geographically is the closest one to Chile. And we realized that this region that is SA is 1 has the bigger latency of all of them. Well, excepting the European ones. But for example, if they use Virginia, the one that is marked in red, they have less latency than Brazil, that is very close. It was strange. Hopefully, we were measuring the latency against Google Cloud. And we saw that the Google Cloud region in South America, that is located in Brazil, has less latency than the Virginia one. After that, we thought, what if we can consume AWS region through Google Cloud? And we decided that if we put a proxy in Google Cloud to consume AWS region, the latency was lower than the one in Virginia. So at the end, we have not done any movement in that sense, but now we have the information to make better decisions. The future of the service is that the service is still running, and we have several new features to offer. The two most demanded are the ability to add custom APIs to be measured and the ability to create alerting on that latency measurements. And to summarize and to say goodbye before doing something with the balloons, I would like to summarize 3 points that it's very important that when you are sharing data within your organization, this data is the data that you need to make your decisions. And this data needs to be accurate. In the beginning, people were sharing data, but we don't know how they will measure in the data, and that was a lack of trust in the data, and that brings us to our discussions that never ends. The second point is that developing a service in an iteratively way has always benefits. So you know that Agile, Lean, Scrum, and a lot of methodologies are telling that. We have suffered that, and I can say that this gives us a lot of benefits. And the last one, and probably the most important, is that in that kind of services, you always need to build trust. And there are a lot of ways, like the ones that are here, to build the trust. But if the people doesn't trust in your service, in your data, probably your service is not going to be success. And before ending, I don't know if you have any questions, but as I mentioned it, please raise your balloons. I need a picture to my daughters to see that please raise your balloons. There were 20. I only see less than 10. See, guys? Smile. OK. Thank you very much. Now you can explode the balloon.
Any questions? We only have time for maybe one, because we're a bit out of schedule.
Hi. Thank you for thank you for the talk. If you're talking about trust between services,
Sorry, guys.
Okay. If you're talking about trust between services, do you provide some SLAs for your internal customers and so on? I mean, if you want somebody to use your service and you want them to trust you, you can provide SLA, some agreements, and people will stick to these SLAs and will be trust to you to achieve it.
Sure. In most of our services, we had SLAs, internal SLAs, that we are trying to cover and we track it. In that service, currently has not these SLAs. Why? Because we have like a maturity framework of the services, and this service is still in beta mode. That means that we are in active development, so we can ensure now the SLA. But in the future, if the service goes up, we should arrive to the beta stage, and probably soon we will get the general available maturity. That means that we will provide some service level agreement to all the company. But bear in mind that this is a helping service. It's not very critical. So we have focus in the company in providing service level agreements in other more critical services. But thank you for the question.
And one more, and that's it, guys, sorry.
This might be a very similar question. Like, latency changes all over the place. You know, there's disk I/O, there's interference on a container, and you look like you're changing your service from one data center to another data center because of the interference. But what is the service level objective? What is the threshold on the latency that you're going to wake up somebody that is on call? Like if somebody's discussing, you know, my latency is too high, it's like, it's fine. It's below the objective. I'm not going to move my services. I'm not going to wake up anybody on call. Because at some point, I guess, you need to agree with the clients on what is the objective.
You are right. In the two services that we were discussing in that was, one was the YAML service, and the other was the Kubernetes cluster that we are offering to Eldred. The SLA was higher than the latency we had. But, yeah, you are right. But there is another component. That is the selling component that we wanted to onboard people in the service. So the thing is not, with that latency, we were not moving to the lowest latency region. But we have this data in order to say, OK, guys, we are not the lowest latency, but the latency is enough for you or not. And that was the discussion. So we are not moving always to the lowest latency, but in some cases makes sense. For example, moving from Ireland to Frankfurt in latency terms makes sense. But probably Frankfurt has not the same reliability than Ireland or has not the same prices. So it's something that we need to review case by case. But having the data, the discussion is not about, is your data or it's mine? Is your apples or are my orange? It's like, we have apples. We want to have apples or orange. And this discussion was the mindset that we changed it thanks to that services. Thank you for the question.
All right.
Thank you very
Paco.
much.